Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, if they implemented human curation the same way that we do at Make Love Not Porn, they would find themselves making so much more money. Okay? And there are two reasons for this. Whose hands would you rather place your future in? Those of a large corporate entity who at the end of the day doesn't give a shit about you, or someone who will always have your best interests at heart, i.e. you? The way to think about us is, if porn is the Hollywood blockbuster movie, Make Love Not Porn is the badly needed documentary.
Welcome to AI Geeks.
For the love of AI. AIGeeks.com.
What is up, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the AI Geeks podcast. I'm your host, Tim Sheikh, and today I've got a phenomenal guest for you, and it's one and only, the amazing Cindy Gallop. She is, of course, the founder and CEO of MakeLoveNotPorn website, which she launched in that famous TED Talk you've probably seen on YouTube back in 2009, where she went a little bit rude. Probably, I don't think I'm allowed to say anything at this early video because of YouTube algorithms or whatever. But we're going to talk about that in detail. But also, her work goes beyond this website. It's actually about fighting against the really dangerous rise of the rape culture all over the web and social media. And it's a problem that indeed has been growing for a very long time. We've been talking about it, I remember, even in the world of tech, probably since the early 2010s. Yet, as a market, quote unquote, it seemed to be getting worse rather than better. And really, if anybody is to beat this rise, it's Cindy. I mean, you'll see in this conversation, and indeed from her character, she's very, very, phenomenal fighter. And she really is an inspiration, not just for women, but for every entrepreneur and every individual out there that believes that the world really should be equal, in the sense that we should not have a rising hate against women and girls. In fact, I'm discussing at the end of this episode this pretty horrific report that was published in the UK in 2024, like just before the summer of 2024, where the rise of men killing women, the rate of that is horrific. We're talking about one man kills a woman every 3 days. I want you to think about that. We're going to be discussing that, and I'm adding my thoughts to it at the end. And pretty much, I think this is an interesting continuation to the last episode where I talked about how we are moving towards the AI dystopia rather than AI utopia, because at the end of the day, when you look at some of the characters involved in the world of tech, they're not really doing much. I mean, at the end of the day, the world of tech is run by men, right? So we have a responsibility as men from the point of view of joining women in this fight, because this is not just bad for women, it's bad for humanity as a whole. So, come on, a man kills a woman every 3 days. I mean, think about that. That's not normal. That's not a good society, is it? What I would like you to do is to share this video with as many female friends that you have, because most of our listeners here are in fact men, according to the statistics. And I don't want this to look like it's a man-only show. It's a show for everybody. But I think we actually absolutely need to share this video with all of your female professionals, entrepreneurs that you know, because we really need to spread this information that unless we bring more women to this discussion, and more importantly, if we actually fund more women in the world of tech, we're actually going to win this fight. Because, in case you've never heard of this before, barely 2% of recent VC funds that went towards the AI startups, actually startups run by women. Barely 2%. Now, as somebody who's involved in the world of AI as an entrepreneur, I can tell you there's a hell of a lot more women out there than 2%. So that tells you something. There's a lot of structural changes that need to be made. And if we're talking about making the world a better place with AI, well, AI isn't going to do jack shit. What we need to do is us humans and societies to start actually fixing the deeper issues that we simply chose to ignore or pretend that it does not exist. But it does, and it's getting worse. And in fact, if indeed we want AI to serve us, well, we need to get rid of this problem first before we can even start thinking about AI solving these problems. So please make sure you subscribe, help the algorithms to push our videos out there. We want to get to 1 million subscribers, so you guys can help us out here on YouTube. But it's all free, of course. But if you do have some money to spare, well, you're very welcome to join our membership program at aigeeks.com/join. Or you can check out all of our sponsors in the description below. All of your help really, really makes a big difference. The more help and support we have, the more we grow, the more amazing guests I can bring to this podcast. So, my friends, Cindy Gallop. I think there's quite a few things that I really wanted to talk to you about because I was really looking forward to this conversation. But I think I want to start talking about your journey with Make Love Not Porn, because you've been a leading figure in the world of advertising. So I'm always interested to know the journey. It's like, how did you move from the advertising world, which I think you're still part of the advertising world, but what led you towards Make Love Not Porn? And well, we're going to discuss why this is relevant to what we're talking about here at AI Geeks, but you take it from here. I mean, how did this whole journey start?
Sure. So, the key thing is, Tim, that my entire life and career has always happened by accident.
Join the club.
I have never consciously, intentionally planned anything. My old boss in the advertising world, Sir John Hegarty, at BBH where I worked, he has this wonderful mantra. John says, do interesting things and interesting things will happen to you. And that's pretty much how I've lived my life, to be frank. So, I basically worked in advertising for many years. And as you referenced, I still have a lot of involvement with the advertising industry. But the reason I left the corporate world is because I turned 45 back in 2005, and I had my very own personal midlife crisis in the sense that I'd always thought of 45 as kind of a midlife point. Obviously, by the way, in a happy assumption one lives to be 90, fingers crossed on that. But in a couple of years running up to my 45th birthday, I'd always gone, on your 45th birthday is the moment when you should pause, take stock, reflect and review. Where have I been? Where am I going? So February 1, 2005, I duly did that. And that was when I went, oh my God, I've just worked 16 years for the same advertising agency, BBH. Wonderful agency, loved them to death. I'd worked for them in London, Singapore, and New York. But I went, wow, I think it's time to do something different. And then the problem was I hadn't the faintest idea what. So vast amounts of thought and angsting ensued. And eventually I went, if I want to review every possible option open to me, what is effectively the second half of my life, maybe the best thing to do is to put myself on the market very publicly and go, okay, guys, here I am. What do you got? And see what comes. So I took a massive leap into the unknown. I resigned as chairman of BBH New York in the summer of 2005 without a job to go to. And honestly, it was the best thing that I ever did in my life, because I am now evangelical about working for yourself.
Yep.
Too many people make the mistake of thinking that a job is the safe option. It's not. Because in a job, you are at the complete mercy of management changes, industry downturns, marketplace dynamics. I always say, whose hands would you rather place your future in? Those of a large corporate entity who at the end of the day doesn't give a shit about you, or someone who will always have your best interests at heart, i.e. you.
Yep.
So that's how I began working for myself. And honestly, Make Love Not Porn was also a complete and total accident. So it came about because I date younger men. And incidentally, dating younger men was an accident too. What I mean by that is, when I was running BBH New York, we were asked to pitch for an online dating brand. And this is like 22 years ago now. Okay, that this brand was coming out of the UK, wanted to take on Match in the American market. And in the advertising industry, when you pitch for a client's account, you have to experience the client's product and the entire competitive landscape. So we all had to online date. And this was 22 years ago, and none of us at the agency on the pitch team ever had, because it wasn't a thing back then. It was just emerging.
Yeah.
So the rest of my team were all living with, married, dating. They all went online as fake personas. I was single. I thought, I have to do this for business reasons. Why not do it for real? So I, posted my profile, was honest about everything, including my age, got a ton of responses, which was very good for the ego. But much to my surprise, because I'd never thought about this as a dating strategy, most of those responses were from younger men. And I thought, gosh, hadn't thought about that, but works for me as someone who never wanted to be married, never wanted children, etc. So I've been dating younger men very happily for the past 22 years. But about 17, 18 years ago, I began realizing through dating younger men that I was encountering an issue that would never have crossed my mind if I had not encountered it so very intimately and personally. I realized that I was personally experiencing what happens when two things converge. And I stress the dual convergence because most people think it's only one thing. I realized I was experiencing what happens when today's total freedom of access to hardcore porn online meets our society's equally total reluctance to talk openly and honestly about sex. When those two factors converge, porn becomes sex education by default, in not a good way.
Yep.
So I find myself encountering a number of sexual behavioral memes in bed. I went, whoa, I know where that behavior is coming from. I thought, gosh, if I'm experiencing this, other people must be as well. I didn't know that because 16 years ago, nobody was talking about this. No one was writing about it. This was me in isolation as a naturally action-oriented person going, I'm going to do something about this. So 15 years ago, purely as a side venture, I put up on no money a tiny clunky website at MakeLoveNotPorn.com that in its original iteration was kind of a public service announcement. Porn world versus real world. Here's what happens in the porn world. Here's what really happens in the real world. I launched at TED in 2009. I became the only TED speaker to say the words, come on my face, on the TED stage, 6 times in succession. The talk went viral as a result. And it drove this extraordinary global response to my tiny website that I had never anticipated. Thousands of people wrote to me from all around the world, young and old, men and female, straight and gay, pouring their hearts out, telling me things about their sex lives and their porn watching habits they'd never told anyone before. And I realized I'd uncovered a huge global social issue. And so that was the point at which I went, oh my God, I now have a personal responsibility. I have to take Make Love Not Porn forwards in a way that will make it much more far-reaching, helpful, and effective. And so I turned it into a business designed to do good and make money simultaneously, which is what I believe ultimately all business should be doing.
Yep.
And so today, Make Love Not Porn is the world's first and only user-generated and importantly 100% human-curated social sex video sharing platform. So a kind of what Facebook would be if it allowed you to openly, healthily, sexually self-express, which it clearly doesn't. The way to think about us is, if porn is the Hollywood blockbuster movie, Make Love Not Porn is the badly needed documentary. We are a unique window onto the funny, messy, loving, wonderful sex we all have in the real world. And what we're doing is we are socializing, normalizing, and destigmatizing sex, bringing it out of the shadows into the sunlight to promote consent, communication, good sexual values and behavior. We are literally sex education through real-world demonstration.
Sounds awesome. I mean, that's like, well, everything you said is purely what an entrepreneur is. It's like, sounds like my story as well. And just as a side note, actually, I did meet John Haggerty years ago. He was one of the VCs I pitched to. Yeah.
That's fantastic. He's a wonderful, wonderful human being.
It's really cool, actually. Yeah, it was very kind of like a father figure. You know what I mean? Like he's like he likes to advise and everything. So
totally.
So yeah, no, it's really, it's great. I mean, the thing about sex education, because I had a guest, Professor Jeremy Leavesley, who he's an educator. He used to teach at university and everything. But we had this long conversation in the last episode where we basically feel that the education system as a whole, it's not really fit for purpose anymore. And the argument that I make, and I see that through my own kids, is like my wife and I, my son, he just finished his A levels, and which is scary. And I thought to myself, and my wife and I, we thought, my goodness, they're teaching him the same shit that we learned like 30 plus years ago. And we're like, but the world has changed. And that's on everything. I mean, okay, they probably changed the way they teach things, the way they teach science and maths or whatever. But for me, it's the social skills that is so important. And in fact, sex education is part of it. And And again, I observe how schools taught my kids about sex. It's the same sort of thing that is basically nothing. It doesn't explain anything about sex. Good.
You're so right, Tim. And
Yeah.
actually, so I am solving for that in two ways.
Mm,
The first is that I designed Make Love Not Porn around my own beliefs and philosophies.
mm,
One of which is that everything in life starts with you and your values.
yeah.
So I regularly ask people this question: what are your sexual values? And nobody can ever answer me because we're not taught to think like that. Our parents bring us up to have good manners, a work ethic, sense of responsibility, accountability. Nobody ever brings us up to behave well in bed. But they should, because in bed, values like empathy,
Yep.
sensitivity, generosity, kindness, honesty, trust, respect are as important as those values are in every other area of our lives where we're actively taught to exercise them. So, I pioneered the concept of good sexual values and good sexual behavior with Make Love Not Porn. And then, as you can probably surmise, parents and teachers began writing to me from day one, okay, because they were so grateful for what I was doing. And they were asking for something that, I've had this concept in the pipeline for the past 10 years because of all of those emails. And it's only now that I've been able to raise the funding to start building it. Because, it's worth just making our listeners aware that I and my tiny team have fought a battle every single day for the past 15 years, not even to build and grow Make Love Not Porn, but to keep it going. Basically, because every piece of business infrastructure any other tech startup takes for granted, we can't. The small print always says no adult content. And that's all pervasive. I can't get funded. I couldn't get banked. It took me 4 years to find one bank here in America that would allow me to open a business bank account, Make Love Not Porn. Every tech service I need to use for a video streaming platform, hosting, encoding, encrypting, the terms of service always say no adult content. In every single case, I have to go to people at the top of the company, explain what I'm doing, beg to be allowed to use their service. Sometimes they let me, sometimes they don't. It's a very labor-intensive process, and we never get to work with best in class of anybody. And my two biggest business growth inhibitors are, number one, payments. PayPal won't work with adults, Stripe won't, mainstream credit card processors won't. I have to work with the murky subculture of adult-friendly payment processors who, because anybody adult has nowhere else to go, charge extortionate fees. I pay out 12% of my revenue every month in payment processing fees alone, when the mainstream rate is 3% or less. My other business growth inhibitor, especially ironic given my background, is that we are banned from advertising Make Love Not Porn anywhere. I cannot promote Make Love Not Porn on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, I ask you, Reddit, I ask you, Google, YouTube, Snapchat, TikTok. And what's infuriating, Tim, is, for example, we are banned from doing paid search ads on Google. But every day, all around the world, people search for Make Love Not Porn without knowing that we exist. And what I mean by that is the top organic search terms that send traffic to us are Make Love, Not Porn, Real Sex Not Porn,
Yeah.
Video Sexo Na Porno, Make Love Not Porn when they don't know there's a company called that. One young man told me that he found us when he Googled porn that is not porn. He was so fed up with everything out there, wanted something different, had no idea what to search for. Fortunately, when you search porn that is not porn, you find Make Love Not Porn. That is how much the world wants what we do, the documentary to porn's Hollywood movie, and know they need us. So I'm a great believer in building solutions to my own problems. And so, as I said, we finally, because we launched our first ever equity crowdfunding campaign on WeFunder earlier this year, we've finally been able to start building. As I say,
Sorry, was it successful? Did you manage to raise the full fund?
No. So first of all, I should explain that the reason it's our first ever equity crowdfunding campaign is because historically, no crowdfunding platform would touch us with a barge pole. Wow. Way back in the day, Kickstarter went fuck off and die. Indiegogo had this artificial demarcation. This one's quite common. Sex toys fine. People having sex on video not fine. Every new crowdfunding platform I approached over the years would suddenly discover, the moment I approached them, they had a no adult content clause. The only reason we launched this campaign is because the wonderful actress Jamila Jamil is a huge fan. She interviewed me on her podcast, loves Make Love Not Porn. She proposed that she lead as the lead investor in an equity crowdfunding campaign and brought us the WeFunder. So we launched earlier this year. We are 1/3 of the way to our target. We're targeting $1 million. We're currently at 350. But even raising that amount has enabled us to start building MakeLoveNotPorn Academy. This is the 0 to 18 and beyond sex education expansion parents and teachers have been begging me for. It's what I characterize as the Khan Academy of sex education. Because Khan Academy tutors on every other topic under the sun except this one. EdTech is exploding as a category, not in this area. So we're currently building an MVP that we plan to launch in a couple months' time. And the Academy is going to work on the same principles as Make Love Not Porn. User-generated, crowdsourced, curated revenue share. So I'm not about reinventing the wheel. This is an aggregation play.
Yeah.
I want to build the go-to global hub for the best of the world's sex education content. So the way it works is, and by the way, our listeners can see our whole vision laid out at MakeLoveNotPorn Academy. That's the URL. But the way it works is we build the Academy, we launch it. We invite sex educators from all around the world to share with us their own content. Coursework materials, books, videos, comic strips. And I use the term educator very broadly. Sexual health and wellness experts, therapists, anybody informing and educating this entire area. Now, we will curate. At the heart of Make Love Not Porn lies what I call the human curation layer on top of the internet. Human eyes will vet every piece of content to make sure it's safe. We endorse it. We will then publish all of this segmented by age appropriateness. So if you're a parent freaking out going, oh my God, my 6-year-old just asked this, what do I say? We will give you the tools and content to be able to have that conversation with a 6-year-old. If you're a teacher of a class of 14-year-olds, here are your age-appropriate teaching materials. If you're an adult, access all areas because adults are desperate for this information as well.
Yeah.
And the really important thing, Tim, is that the Academy will be where children and young people can access sex education without parental teacher gatekeeping. And here's why that's important. I have a friend who's a mother, and as you have to these days, she monitors her kids' browsing history. So this happened a few years ago. Her son was 8 years old, and she saw, to her horror, that on the family computer, he had Googled sex for children. So she freaked out, but did the right thing, stayed calm, sat him down, darling, see what we're looking for, talk me through why. Tim, this anecdote is adorable and horrifying in equal measure because her son wanted to learn about sex. He was a child. He knew he was a child. He wanted to learn about sex in a child-appropriate way. He sweetly, innocently Googled sex for children. You can imagine what came back, utterly traumatized.
Yeah.
And so the Academy, where an 8-year-old boy can enter his age, we will only serve him age-appropriate sex education content. Some of this will be free to access, for that example, but we'll also charge to download, subscribe, bulk buy if you're a school. There are different revenue streams, different use cases. By the way, we're talking a huge revenue generator. And importantly, we will take a 10% commission, but that revenue will go straight to the educators. Because right now, Tim, I can tell you, no one goes into sex education to make money. I have friends all around the world who are brilliant sex educators. They face all the same problems I do. Their content gets blocked on Facebook, Instagram. Their accounts get banned on TikTok. They're banned from advertising as well. They can't even make a living doing this. They've had to take other jobs to survive. And I want to change that because this is enormously valuable work. But I have 3 other agendas with the Academy to the point you originally made. So first of all, when I build an educational component, I reframe Make Love Not Porn. I give us social legitimacy. Secondly, as I said, I believe in building solutions to my own problems.
Yep.
So I'm banned from advertising. I've designed the Academy to be a very efficient recruitment engine for the core business. Because when you're 18 and over, you graduate to sex education through real-world demonstration. We can send parents, teachers, adults to the core business. But the third agenda item is, very importantly, I'm out to prove concept. And what I mean by that is, for years people have said to me, oh, Cindy, you should go to schools. Make Love Porn should be on the curriculum. And I've always said, no, I shouldn't, because anybody trying to bring sex ed into schools comes up against parent-teacher association,
Yeah,
moral
I was
panic.
about to say that. Yeah,
But,
yeah,
but, but here's the thing. The people banning sex ed from schools don't know what it'd be like if they allowed it in. They just know it really bad. In their heads, they have this abstract Sodom and Gomorrah will ensue. When I can show you what doesn't exist anywhere at the moment, the best of the world's sex ed content all in one place, and you can see for yourself at a glance how brilliant, informative, educational, healthy, and non-threatening it is. And when you can pick and choose and search it by, age appropriateness, cultural sensibility, because we'll have Christian sex ed, Muslim sex ed, Jewish sex ed, and when you can decide what you want to take away from it based on your personal comfort level, what's right for your family, what's right for your school, that is when I can get sex ed into schools. I'm building outside the system to get it into the system.
yeah. That sounds cool, actually. But I want to go back to the reasons behind the taboo, because the irony when you said that Twitter or X now they banning you from advertising, yeah, it's filled up with porn, literally. Like, I mean, it's unusable. I stopped using it because I'm like, you go to any
It's
comments,
gobsmacking.
especially.
Yeah,
Like,
and also, by the way, Tim, they're desperate advertisers. Advertising revenue.
yeah,
Advertising.
yeah. And I'm wondering, so it's going back, is because sometimes I wonder, is the taboo because of religious beliefs? Or is it because when you say sex, people automatically think about hardcore porn? You see what I'm saying? Is it
Yeah.
because like it's multi-generational misconception or association between sex and hardcore porn that people just freak out? They say, "Oh my god, the sex, it's hardcore porn."
Um, Honestly, Tim, first of all, we are talking about the single area of universal human experience that we
Yeah,
are all most engaged with, most fascinated by, and most fucked up about. And by the
yeah,
way, dollar signs all over that shit.
yeah.
Investors crying out
We
now.
we exist because of it.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So we, and by the way, everything I'm saying about the issue is a huge market opportunity,
Yeah,
because it
cool.
is precisely because, sex more than anything else proves a truth that's saying we do not see things as they are, we see things as we are.
Yeah,
And fear of what other people will think operates around sex more than any other area. This is actually why, I have challenges raising funding, because the issue is not that my investors aren't out there. My investors are absolutely out there. There are a ton of them, and there are a ton of them in every single country in the world. But they are impossible for me to find by the usual means, because they all have one thing in common. Your willingness to fund Make Love Not Porn is entirely a function of your personal sexual journey. It is a function of your personal lens on sex and sexuality that's been shaped by your own experience of it. And obviously, I have no way to research and target for that.
but what about
What
all the users that came to you for the past how many years?
No, I mean, there are some within them, but I'm looking for the people with the big bucks, you know. So,
No, I mean the people for the big bucks. I mean, because they want to see proof of concept. So you have proven the concept. You've got quite a lot of users.
no, it's much more about the fact. My only challenge is finding those people, Tim, because
Right,
again, sex is the area where you cannot tell from the outside what anybody thinks on the inside.
right.
The people who look like they would totally get it don't. The people who look like complete prudes do. Okay, and by the way, just to give you an idea of what I mean by that, I've been trying to raise funding for Make Love Porn for 15 years. Okay, I've been a tech entrepreneur for longer than that. I have a lot of friends in the tech world in Silicon Valley, and I can tell you that all of those VCs and investors who are going to sex parties out the wazoo in San Francisco and the Bay Area, who are heading for the orgy tent at Burning Man every year,
Mm.
they are not funding sex tech. That's how
Mm.
fucked up we are about sex. Okay, that's the issue. So what I have to do deliberately is I put what I'm doing out there all the time. Across all my social channels, I do every media interview, every podcast. I have to make synaptic connections happen that will attract those investors to me. This is a long, slow, painful, and highly inefficient process, but it does actually work from time to time.
Yeah, well, I have my own issues with investors. Hence, my current company has 0 investors. I mean, you have that lovely freedom. Yeah, the thing is with investors, I think I mean, from my personal experience, they obsess too much about their public image, isn't it? So it's all about, like you said, it's about, it's their personal perception, perhaps. I mean, maybe because they do they do the wrong thing, so they don't want anything that could remotely associate any possibility that people might find out that actually they're doing the wrong thing. Which is bizarre.
And that is also the issue, Tim, because I have to tell you, so like I said, I have to operate this very unique investor finding strategy. It has actually worked. I've been gobsmacked at the amount of incoming investor interest I find on LinkedIn. Investors reach out saying, I see you raising funding. I'd like to talk. I'm intrigued. Tell me more. So I've actually acquired a list of interested investors. What I'm still missing is that all-important lead investor.
Right.
The person who will put in a chunk of change, which doesn't even have to be that large, but will, to your point, make that public commitment and vote of confidence and stand shoulder to shoulder with me. Because, the investors I'm talking to say, we don't lead. We're interested. Come back when you have a lead. Or they ask, who's the lead? Because that will determine, So it really is that fear of what other people think. Because if I can get somebody, and ideally somebody with a reasonable public profile, to go, I believe in this and I'm putting my money where my mouth is, I can wrangle all the lemmings in behind them. I have a lot of lemmings.
Because I think it's one of the things that lead investors always look for. Actually, all investors tend to look for that is an exit strategy. Which I suppose, I mean, like we're kind of diverting into an interesting conversation. So what would be the exit strategy for you?
Sure.
Because the lead investor, even though, because what I learned when I was chatting to investors before as well, and even some of them were knocking on the door for my current company, and I said, look, we're focusing on ethics. And I cannot tell you, Cindy, how many times I heard they say, oh man, ethics is bullshit. Not because they don't believe in it, but it just doesn't sell in their eye. Or they know that if you were to build something that is ethical, it takes a long time. But what they want is a 3 to 5 year exit strategy, which for us, we're like, well, we're not interested in exiting, not in your way, because we want to build this thing properly. And I think you are in the same sort of movement, right? Like you're trying to build tech for good, but obviously it's one of those things that can take time and will take time. It has been taking time, but the investors would want some kind of exit strategy. So have you been confronted by that? I mean, did they ask you that?
So first of all, after my TED talk in 2009, I pitched the concept for MakeLoveNotPorn.tv for 2 years, because that's how long it took me to find one angel investor who got it and put up $500,000 in seed funding for me to build the platform. And by the way, he's been amazing. He's put in like $4 million in total since.
Cool.
But he said to me up front, he said, Cindy, what's our exit strategy? And I said to him, our exit strategy doesn't exist yet because we're going to create it. Because when we do what we're setting out to do, socialize sex, that opens up a ton of exit strategies. And so, and I have a whole bunch of them on a dedicated slide in my pitch deck. So the types of exit strategies I'm looking at for Make Love Not Porn, the core business, I'm going to come on to the Academy and some other, that there are interesting opportunities there. So first of all, Netflix. Large streaming platforms caught up in cutthroat content wars. We are talking, as I said earlier, about the single area of online content that everybody is most engaged with. But we represent a very interesting opportunity to make love, not porn, which is we are the investor's holy grail. We are how you monetize sex safely with our 100% human curation model. So, for Netflix, Hulu, any of those platforms that want to capture audiences the likes of which they have not even seen to date with real world sex, that's an exit strategy. Similarly, large digital media platforms also engaged in cutthroat content wars because, it's been very interesting to observe. I've spent 15 years parallel pathing two things, working to build Make Love Not Porn, working to change the cultural and business context around it. Because when you have a truly world-changing startup, you have to change the world to fit it, not the other way
Yep.
around.
Yep.
And media have now realized that sexual health and wellness and sex content is absolutely where the clickbait is. And so we are the natural corollary of, the increasing, large segments of sexual health and wellness content that they're building out. Health tech. So something very interesting about Make Love Not Porn is, as the world's only platform for real world sex, we inevitably showcase how real world people manage their real world sex lives through real world health conditions. So, for example, we have a number of menopausal Make Love Not Porn stars, as we call our contributors, who talk about what it's like, going through the menopause, how they are managing their sexuality, their partnered sex lives through that. We have Make Love Not Porn stars with vaginismus, which is very common in many more women than people realize, and how they manage through that. We have aging Make Love Not Porn stars talking about how they deal with everything that comes with age, with chronic health conditions, chronic pain. We have a Make Love Not Porn star just had a full hysterectomy. So she talks about how she's reclaiming her body post that. So actually, big pharma and health tech platforms are a really interesting opportunity, not least because I designed Make Love Not Porn to offer the opportunity for product demonstration, the way a lot of products never get to be demonstrated but should. Then big social media platforms who see the power of our very efficient human curation system and can plug into that to be able to open up to healthy sexual content that has been vetted. The Academy represents a very interesting opportunity because, build that, demonstrate that I can provide the world with the badly needed sex ed content hub at a time, by the way, Tim, when sex education is being censored and deplatformed everywhere, including by the Google algorithm. All I have to do is demonstrate how much money I can make out of that, and I can exit way earlier to an edtech platform, in a relatively short space of time. And
so do you want it to exit? So do you want to actually sell it to somebody, to the Netflixes of this world, or whatever?
My answer is it depends. Because obviously, to your point, I'm being faced with investors saying what's your exit strategy. So my exit strategy is very clear. But let's see how far we can take it and see whether or not we wish to exit.
So that kind of interesting because, you talked about. It's just kind of. I'm starting to think when I think aloud, my brain just goes all over the place. But when you said that, it's basically there's a lot of content competition. So, have you had any sort of pushback from actual porn sites? The big porn sites. The porn hubs of this world, etc. I mean, I don't want to be promoting them, but they are powerful platforms. I mean, have they? I don't know. Do they see you as a threat?
No, not at all. Because I use the movie documentary analogy entirely deliberately.
Right.
As our tagline, Make Love Not Porn, says, we are pro-sex, pro-porn, pro-knowing the difference. We are not a competitor to porn. We are the world's only real-world sex counterpoint and complement. People like watching movies. People also like watching documentaries. Sometimes in the mood for a movie, sometimes in the mood for a documentary. So that analogy is entirely deliberate because we complement porn, but we are very badly needed because beyond us, there is nothing else out there that shows you what sex looks like in the real world. We answer the question that everybody has been asking since the dawn of time. What is everybody else really doing in bed? And now we show you.
Yeah. I know. I mean, it's fantastic because I'm just wondering because one of the things that you and I we DM'd about when we met is it's obviously the current rise of sort of anti-feminism and toxic masculinity. I mean, there are reports that say this is not the right thing to call it because you're effectively attacking the young men rather than helping them. I mean, I don't know, maybe, but for me, one of the reasons actually I discovered your TED Talk video actually was years ago when I was doing research and sort of researching for my previous startup where I wanted to fight misinformation And I was just looking about what's out there, and somehow your video popped up. That's how I've discovered Make Love Not Porn, and of course, I mean the talk about the ease of access towards to porn, on social media. That's not new. That's been around for a long time. In fact, people started talking about how easy, like dangerously easy, for children to access porn even before social media. The fact that if you knew where to look on the internet, you'll be able to find porn, right? So I'm just wondering, is your solution the solution to the current rising and unfortunately prospering the sort of the toxic masculinity market, the Andrew Tates of this world? Because we're seeing even political figures that seem to be kind of celebrating it, not directly. They're not saying, "Oh, we like Andrew Tate," but we had the dickhead here, Nigel Farage, when he incited, alleged, we call them here the riots that we had here. They was the Farage riots, right? Because he didn't incite it, but
I'm aware of all of that.
Yeah, so he was kind of fueling it, but no, but he was challenged by Tom Swarbrick, for listeners outside the UK. He's a radio presenter on LBC, and he actually challenged Nigel Farage live and said, where did you get your information from? And he said, Andrew Tate. So we've got an elected politician, literally in Parliament, uses Andrew Tate as his source of information.
So Tim, you're absolutely right. Make Love Not Porn is the solution to Andrew Tate. And I say that because, I designed Make Love Not Porn to be fully diverse and inclusive, and we are. Mm-hmm. Our members, our Make Love Not Porn stars, range in age from 18 to 80, all races, ethnicities. We're a global platform. Male, female, trans, non-binary, straight, LGBTQ, asexual. But what is really interesting is that in the 11 years we've operated as a business, we've observed that Make Love Not Porn comes as the biggest revelation to men. We get more great emails and appreciative comments from men than anybody else. By the way, women love us too, but it's especially interesting because we are something utterly unique that men will find nowhere else on the internet, which is a safe space where men can be and watch other men being open, emotional, and vulnerable around sex. You would not believe the number of men who write to us regularly and say, I just watched my first video, Make Love Not Porn, and afterwards I cried. I've said for years, I wish society understood the opposite of what it thinks is true. Women enjoy sex just as much as men, and men are just as romantic as women. Yet neither gender is allowed to openly celebrate either of those facts. We would all be so much better off if they were. I picked up a wonderful Twitter exchange some time back between two men. The first man had tweeted, as a joke, obviously, hey guys, got this really weird fetish. I've got this kink where I want to watch porn where people are honest, loving, loyal, decent, and really like each other. Hit me up the honest links, please. And another man replied and said, there's this website called MakeLoveNotPorn where you can watch real couples making love. He said, I watched a video where the woman said to her man, I love you, while they're making love. He said, sincerely, I cried when I heard that. We are one of the solutions to toxic masculinity. And in fact, Tim, I've been saying this publicly for years, our mission ultimately at Make Love Not Porn is to help end rape culture globally. Now, that may sound like a very big mission, but we have 11 years of proof of concept at a micro level. We end rape culture by doing something very simple that nevertheless nobody else anywhere is doing. We end rape culture by showing you how wonderful great consensual communicative sex is in the real world. Our social sex videos role model good sexual values and good sexual behavior. And here's the key part. We make all of that aspirational versus what you see in porn and popular culture. One man left a comment saying, this video makes me want to be a better man in the bedroom and in life. We can do that.
But what's the cause of the rise of rape culture? Because obviously Andrew Tate isn't the cause, he's the symptom. This is something that's been building over years.
It's very simple, Tim, it's the patriarchy. So for years, people have said to me, I've been doing media interviews for 15 years, I get asked all the same questions. So people go, so Cindy, why do you think we're all so repressed about sex? And I've been asked that so often, I now have an answer down pat. 3 reasons. Reason number 1, Reason number one, centuries of repression, religion, social, cultural dynamics in every single country in the world. Everything we talk about is global. Reason number two, to your question, the patriarchy. Because historically, every institution has been male-dominated, including government and religion. We as women have never been allowed to bring our lens to bear on human sexuality, and the world is a poorer place for it. And the third reason, very straightforwardly, is there are not enough people like me. And what I mean by that is, as you've heard from me, society makes it fucking difficult to innovate and disrupt social narratives around sex. I've known many people who've tried and given up, and I don't blame them. My life is shitty on a daily basis because of what I do. We need many more people like me who will not give up no matter what.
Which is sad. I mean, I'm just thinking, why is that? Is it because you say, women like you are basically fighting the fight all the time? Yeah, porn sites emerge, porn platform emerge, and they become very successful. So nobody seems to be challenging them. Which is kind of bizarre.
Just to correct that, Tim, because I've found that this is something most people aren't aware of. The porn industry is dominated by one massive monopoly, which should not be allowed to exist in any other industry, but nobody wants to bring antitrust legislation to adults. A company that used to be called MindGeek is now called ALO, owns everything. ALO owns Pornhub, YouPorn, RedTube, Men.com, Brazzers.
I think there's a report. I think I'm probably going to share it in the description. There was an investigative report from Tortoise Media about them. Like they're pretty dodgy.
There's been a number of, First of all, by the way, when you operate at that scale monopolistically, you'd be amazed who's willing to work with you financially and not tell the world they're doing it. But secondly, as with any other industry, that monopoly has a massive stranglehold on creativity and innovation. I have a ton of friends who are brilliant indie pornographers, queer, female. They don't get the traffic, the numbers, and the revenue they deserve because nobody can find them.
So they're basically controlling the web like that.
I mean, Pornhub is where everyone goes first and foremost.
It's the number one most visited website apparently.
But I mean, you wouldn't even know that there's anything else almost. But, that's the monopoly,
and that's dangerous, isn't it? Because of effectively, I mean, are they the cause? Would you blame them for the rise of?
No, absolutely not. I'll tell you, what I highly recommend, Tim, is read a book that actually I recommend to everybody. It was written some years ago by a wonderful man, and it's called Misogyny, the World's Oldest Prejudice.
Okay.
It is the history of misogyny since the dawn of time. That is the problem in a patriarchal society everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's what female founders like me are now out to change. And honestly, Tim, because I'm a great fan of radical simplicity, I like to keep things very simple. The very simple answer to everything you're asking about right now is fund female founders.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? And I contextualize how uniquely Make Love Not Porn operates in the broader tech landscape as a whole, because the young white male founders of the giant tech platforms and applications that dominate all our lives today, they are not the primary targets, online or offline, of harassment, abuse, sexual assault, racism, violence, rape, revenge porn. Therefore, they did not and they do not proactively design for the prevention of any of these things on their platforms. And we see the results of that around us every single day.
Yeah.
Those of us who are most at risk every single day, women, Black people, people of color, LGBTQ, people with disabilities, we design safe spaces and safe experiences, but we don't get funded. Only 1.7% of all venture capital last year went to female founders.
Yep.
And that is why we have still not seen what the future of the internet could be when it's designed and built through the female lens at scale. And I say that because I designed Make Love Not Porn through the female lens to be the safest place on the internet. I designed around what everyone else should have, nobody else did, human curation. There's no self-publishing of anything. Our curators watch every video from beginning to end before we approve or reject, and we publish it. No one else does that. We review every post on every member profile, every comment on every video before we approve or reject, and we publish it. No one else does that. We can vouch for every single piece of content on our platform in a way no one else can. And the key thing about that, Tim, is we are tiny, bootstrapping, have no money, and we've human created everything for 11 years. Imagine what Facebook, Instagram, TikTok could do with their billions if they chose to. Safety on the internet is not a matter of viability, it's a matter of will. So I've had a MakeLoveNotPorn AI product in the pipeline for 5 years. You haven't seen it yet because I need funding, which I don't have. And obviously with AI, I need a lot of funding.
It's expensive. Yeah.
And I had the idea for this 5 years ago, coming out of a conversation with a friend of mine whose background is AI and machine learning. So as you know, OpenAI, ChatGPT, etc., all built on LLMs, large language models. As you've just heard, I have something very unique at Make Love Not Porn. I have an LVM. I have a large video model that is the world's only pool of 100% human-curated, fully consensual, real-world sex content. I want to use AI to turn that into an algorithm for consent with a ton of use cases, because what I'm talking about is actually an enterprise application. And I'll give you a couple of examples. The first one is Hollywood. And I say that because right now, all around us in popular culture, movies, streaming, videos, we see many sex scenes that purport to be consensual but are actually modeling non-consensual behavior. Whether it is Game of Thrones, where the only way anyone ever has sex is rape, pretty much, or it is rom-coms, where even within a love story, when you get to the sex scene, there is zero foreplay, instant penetration, instant simultaneous orgasm, no communication. Imagine being able to run your script or your film through an algorithm that will tell you whether what you are showcasing is actually consensual. Second use case, criminal court. Because, as I think we all know, something like 1% of all rape cases ever make it into the judicial system. Something like 0.000 whatever percent ever result in convictions. Rape is the only crime where the onus is entirely on the victim to prove it happened.
Yeah.
Imagine being able to bypass the he said, she said of the courtroom, the entrenched bias in the minds of old white male judges, with an algorithm that will tell you the nuances of whether what happened was or wasn't consensual. That is just one example of AI through the female lens that is not getting funded, while deep fake porn is currently ruining the lives of millions of girls and women all around us in every single country in the world as we speak.
Yeah, it's a rising problem.
Fund female founders.
Yeah, no, amen to that. I mean, and I've sort of been calling this out for quite a long time. I mean, I remember even like with Facebook, like when you were saying about how you like your team, and in fact, you use this curate content. I mean, I remember way back in the day when people were saying, well, actually, social media need to do that. And there were talks about that we had to regulate social media and that we need to force them to do it. And I remember so clear because I was, when I started out, I was in Google Campus London. So literally, it was just a few tiny companies at the time. And one of those tiny companies was DeepMind. I think we were one floor above them or something. But we used to have events and we always used to talk to one another, etc. And I remember there was a conversation where, myself and quite a few others were saying that the idea, because there were already murmurs that Facebook wanted to use AI to curate content. And, and I remember like we were saying and actually arguing and we're saying, well, firstly, you should not put AI on the internet because the problem with AI, I know it's called intelligence. There is no intelligence. It's statistical analysis, right? And the way it works is like if you feed data into it, it just regurgitates another version of that data, right? So the internet is full of garbage. So it's literally garbage in, garbage out. So the idea that AI could curate anything, right, without training properly, or without training it with clean data, it's for the birds. Yep. But unfortunately, no one listened. I mean, that's the issue. Like no one listened, and of course, the rest is history.
Here's the enormous irony, Tim, because I've been saying this publicly for years as well. If those giant platforms, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, If they implemented human curation the same way that we do at Make Love Not Porn, they would find themselves making so much more money. Okay? And there are two reasons for this. The first is they think that human curation is an impossible task. It's not. Because the moment you announce to the world that you are human curating everything, you instantly turn off the fire hose of Nazis, racists, child abusers, because when people know that content will not make it through human curation, they stop uploading it.
But then
So
what would you say? What would you say to the MAGA types that would say, "Oh, you're suppressing freedom of speech"?
because as a private company, you can do whatever you want. And an interesting thing is, I always explain to people that human curation at MakeLoveNotPorn starts far further back than on our platform, because we make it crystal clear what the values are that we stand for. We make it crystal clear what kind of content you want. Here's an interesting thing: when you're really clear about what kind of content you want, that is the only kind of content you get. You know that old saying, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
Yeah.
You cannot,
Like
like
Elon
Facebook,
Musk.
with everyone, and then not expect a shit show to ensue. So
Yeah.
first of all, enormously cost efficient human curation, because you instantly have a lot less content to curate, and you eradicate all the bad stuff. And then the second reason you'll make so much more money than you ever have before is, especially bearing in mind my background, two keywords: brand safety. The moment you guarantee to advertisers their ads will never, ever, ever end up next to content they don't want them to, you literally quadruple, quintuple your advertising revenues from where they are now.
But is there a danger of because you see, for me, everything you said makes perfect sense 15 years ago. But now we have a problem of habits. People develop the habits that basically they want. I mean, I can't remember where I saw this recently. I think it was James O'Brien that was making the point that he can't leave Twitter because he enjoys the arguments or something along these lines. I'm just paraphrasing. But we kind of, as humans now, we've been exposed to social media for a very long time. Certainly long enough for us to have developed the habit that, okay, we need to be arguing all the time, right? To fight against the Farages and the idiots online. You take that away, it becomes boring. I think even what was it? When Mark Zuckerberg announced Threads, and everybody was like, "Yeah, we're leaving X or Twitter, move to Threads." People move to Threads, and they're like, "Oh man, it's as boring as hell." And they actually went back to Twitter, which is crazy. So I'm wondering, how do we solve? Because that's a problem, isn't it? I mean,
you can change anybody's behavior.
Oh, absolutely. I know.
I always say that I have the perfect background for what I do now, because I've spent 39 years working in the business of advertising.
Yeah.
That's 39 years working in the business of getting people to do things they originally had no intention of doing.
Absolutely. And now you've got AI that powers it, psychographic models, etc.
I come from an entire industry that is built on the fact that we get people to do things they originally had no intention of doing. Nobody's behavior is fixed. Take it from me. We can change anything. And by the way, female founders especially can change all of this when we get the funding that enables us to scale to the same level as the white male platforms that are currently, putting people into these, modals of behavior that we can absolutely get them out of. Make Love Not Porn as a unique business has a unique capability. We have the power to change people's sexual attitudes and behavior for the better in a way that nothing else can. That's an extraordinary capability. The world has not yet seen it at scale because investors not yet funded me to be able to do that. But we can change human sexual behavior at scale. So yeah, we can change anything.
Absolutely. But then there's a danger, because actually I made a video about this where I discussed this whole and basically challenging the narratives that a lot of the VCs and the AI companies make, that, we're going to live in this AI utopia, that AI can do all these things, blah, blah, blah. Now, technologically speaking, I made an argument that technologically speaking, yes, we can. But the problem is, I don't believe we'll ever reach the utopia. Actually, we are actually moving towards AI dystopia with open arms, big smiles, like idiots, purely because the investors that you mentioned. And we kind of allowing, the likes of Elon Musk to basically push out models that he's done recently, where basically there are no guardrails. We've got people like the MAGA movements. JD Vance, he literally attacked women like yourselves, right? You've got Trump. If he becomes president, he's going to push for the Project 2025. I don't know if you've read the summary of Project 2025, which basically is going. Basically,
I've read it, Tim. You can take that for granted.
Yeah, I know. But what I'm saying, so effectively, I'm just wondering. I mean, this isn't a political discussion, but I mean, the reality is, if he becomes president and Project 2025 becomes a reality, then pretty much everything that we're talking about here is doomed, isn't it? Potentially.
My response to that, Tim, is so. As I mentioned earlier, over the years I've been asked a lot of the same questions in interviews, and another question I get asked regularly is, so Cindy, when do you think all of this will change? When do you think we'll all be less repressed about sex? And my response to the journalist is, you asked that question in completely the wrong way. And I go, and no fault on you because we're talking things like this. You asked that question in the passive tense. All of this changes when you and I and everyone else make it change, and I don't wait for things to change, I make them change. My favorite quote of all time is Alan Kay, who said, in order to predict the future, you have to invent it. I am all about inventing the future. Too many people think the future is something that happens without us, rolls us over in its wake. I'm all about decide what you want the future to be and make it happen. And trust me, there are many, many other women like me. There are many other men thinking the same thing. And whatever happens, there are a ton of us who are absolutely going to make the change happen that solves and eradicates that issue. So
no matter what.
No matter what, yeah. And it always will be, by the way. It's the human spirit.
No, absolutely. Well, I suppose, yeah. Well, like with everything with politics, it's temporary, isn't it? so the whole Trump shenanigans. So, well, I'm hoping. Well, I don't live in America, but hopefully things will be in the other direction, right? Like, I'm not telling people how to vote, but I think if Kamala Harris.
Tim, don't say any of that when you're talking in the passive tense. There are a ton of women right now who are determined that Kamala Harris is going to be the next president of the United States. There are a ton of men, by the way, but there are a ton of people. Nobody knows the outcome, but what all right-minded people are doing is going, we're going to bloody make that happen.
Absolutely. No. Well, yeah. Well, here in the UK, you've got my support. That's for sure. Whatever we can, we'll do it. But anyway, on that note, I mean, again, Cindy, thank you so much. I mean, I think this is the sort of conversation that we probably need several other episodes in the future. But yeah, I really appreciate your time. This is really exciting, and I think using your words, yeah, we'll make it happen. We'll blow shit up, as you say, right?
Exactly. Excellent. Tim, it's been great talking to you.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Cindy. Well, everyone, that's a wrap. Really cool conversation, wasn't it? I think she really made some really interesting points there, Cindy. I mean, she is a proper entrepreneur. I mean, I can relate so much with everything that she said in terms of being mission driven, but certainly the issues that we discussed here is element of AI bias. Because it's very easy for us to discuss AI bias and that how do we deal with the bias and we need to train the data, yada, yada, yada. But the thing is, the data reflects the world that we live in. So if the world that we live in is dominated by misogyny, dominated by, a rise in rape culture, dominated by idiots calling themselves real men, I mean, what do you expect to see in the AI models? Because, as I said in this discussion, a tiny reminder, there is no intelligence in AI, all right? Another tech bro is going to say to you, oh, no, there is intelligence. There is no intelligence in AI. AI simply reflects the data that you feed into it, right? And if the data reflects us as a society, as humans, you're going to see that reflection in the AI output, right? You can train it all you like, whatever. Yes, it's going to take time. I somewhat disagree with Cindy when she said that, social media companies can curate everything right now. I'm not sure if they can. They could before. But now, the amount of content that they have, it's truly humongous. I mean, somehow I don't think their shareholders would let them. I mean, even if they want to, but definitely they're not making any effort. I mean, I agree with Cindy there. I mean, they're not making any effort whatsoever. In fact, we're seeing more reports where they seem to be doing even less effort. They're firing people who are responsible for curating information. Like, we've seen that with X. We're seeing that with Facebook as well. I mean, they're not really putting a lot of investment into that. I agree with her on that one. But the point I want to make, though, the issues that I'm very concerned about, of course, is the rise of toxic masculinity. Now, I know there are reports that suggest that this is a bad thing to call and it's an attack. It's not an attack. It's really calling a spade a spade. Because, I mean, there's one report here that I want to share with you. And again, the link is in the description below. And this is in the UK. I mean, if you know any other reports in your country, please feel free to share it below. But this is from the National Police Chiefs Council, NPCC. And it's a report that was actually published this summer, I believe, or just before this summer. And it's titled Violence Against Women and Girls. And I'll just give you a small flavor of this. The harm caused to victims and society by violence against women and girls in all its forms, including but not limited to harassment, stalking, rape, sexual assault, murder, honor-based abuse, coercive control, is immeasurable. And it continues. While men and boys also suffer from many of these forms of abuse, they disproportionately affect women. In fact, the report says, a woman is killed by a man every 3 days in the UK. So we're not talking about countries where women are suppressed, like in Afghanistan. This is the UK. Yeah? So imagine what is happening in countries like Afghanistan. So when we talk about, we want to create an equal world, well, okay, let's deal with that then. Where this is coming from? Where did this come from? And I would argue, if people think that, being a man means that we attack women, I'm sorry, you're not a man, you're just a coward. I get a little bit sensitive about this because, I have a lot of important women in my life. I mean, I lost one of them, my mother, recently. So for me, this could be anybody's mother, or girlfriend, or daughter, or niece, sister, wife. So I know most of our listeners, in fact, are young men. And I'm not suggesting that you guys are like that, but you may know somebody who's like that. This has to be dealt with. We can't simply sit around and say, it's one of those things on social media. No. Look what happened in the UK a few weeks ago. It's the social media warriors. Yeah. And I say that sarcastically. These idiots are inciting violence, hatred online that leads to riots and terrorism. What we've seen here in the UK is a white supremacy-led terrorism. Yeah? So when people say, it's just whatever, banter or yada yada, or freedom of speech, that's all bullshit. It's not freedom of speech, it's not banter, it's bullshit. It's inciting hatred. It's inciting violence. What kind of man does that? I mean, really. Let me give you my definition. Actually, it's not my definition, the definition of manhood, quote unquote, but it's the way my late grandfather, described it to me as a child. You see, my grandfather was a Second World War veteran. Because I'm half Russian, my grandfather was from the Soviet Union, and he was one of the Soviet soldiers that invaded Germany in order to liberate the Jews from concentration camps. And I remember so clearly as a child, because I used to spend a lot of time with my granddad. One of the things that he told me is that, he's seen a lot of deaths in the battlefield. Obviously, he killed a lot of soldiers too. But what he has seen in these concentration camps is something that is just beyond humanity. It's something, it's like hell. He described it was something, it was the PTSD that he had. He did have PTSD, like all soldiers do. But for me, that was the cause of his PTSD. It's what he's seen in the concentration camps. Right? And at the time, I lived in the Middle East, but though I did travel to the Soviet Union a lot, so again, it's not particularly pro-women society. My grandfather said something to me, and I think at the time, obviously, I didn't know why he said it, but I really believe he wanted to make sure that I don't grow up like the kind of man that basically believes in that you have to be powerful by overpowering women and people and to be superior to everybody else, which is basically what the Nazis do or did and what they do today, the neo-Nazis. They believe, I mean, all that manhood nonsense. You look at the far-right movements and the neo-Nazi movements. They all believe in that. Not bullshit, right? And he said to me something, and I'm sort of paraphrasing because it was in Russian. He said, a real man is somebody who's willing to give his life to protect and look after his family, to serve his country, and serve his community, regardless. Yeah? Serve the community regardless. Men, women, whatever backgrounds, whatever religion, that doesn't matter. We're all humans. That, for me, what a decent person does, man or woman. But if we're talking about manhood here, well, I call that manhood. Rather than being a chihuahua barking like an idiot on social media, pretending to be a real man. Because none of these people that you see online have done what my grandfather has done, or ticks any of the boxes that he's suggested now. They may have some family members, I don't know. Most of them don't have families, right? And certainly, and if they do, they're not serving their country. They're not serving their community. What the hell are you talking about? They're not serving anybody. They're just serving themselves and their egos. That's it. That's all they're doing. I mean, all of the characters that Cindy and I talked about. Can you see them giving their lives for their family? Yeah? I know I'm judging them, but I judge people by their actions. These aren't people that give a crap about any community. So, this is the world that I want to live in. I want to live in a world where we all care equally towards one another, regardless of your gender, your sexual orientation, your religion, your race, age, whatever. Because the people at the top of our society, they want us to be divided. Yeah? So if you want to be a puppet to these people and just follow them like sheep, well, that's on you. But don't expect the world to be a better place if it's run by a bunch of sheep and puppeteers. So I think this is an important topic, and hopefully I will be bringing more experts in this area. I mean, Cindy is definitely a leading voice in this from one perspective, but as she has highlighted very clearly, it's a very important perspective indeed. And in fact, it's one of the key reasons why we have the problems that we have. And I do agree with her. In fact, what she's trying to do is indeed a solution, because a lot of the barriers that we have is cultural, but also I think it's based on people not willing to change from the past. I mean, we see that in politics today. People want to go backwards. People want to have more men yet again in power and less women, right? Maybe you should ask them why that is, okay? But I want a world where the best people in the world can do whatever they can do, have the opportunities to do it, regardless of who they are, what they are, how old they are. It means nothing. That is a truly successful society. And that's the society that I would like to see around the world. So if we're talking about AI utopia, and I did speak about this in my other video, where I don't believe that we're going to reach AI utopia if we carry on with this thing, with this issue. But I do believe that if we actually have the will to change, then we will change it. Once we change it, then we can start talking about AI utopia or digital utopia, whatever. So, yeah, I feel somewhat rattled by this because, when I've seen this report, it was shocking, really, really shocking. And there's more. There are, unfortunately, loads of other reports like that. So, to my fellow men, I want you to think about this. Think about this. Forget the numbers. Imagine if they say a woman is killed by a man every 3 days in the UK. I want you to picture a woman in your life in that statistic. And you tell me if you can live a happy life like that. Certainly I can't. I can't live a life filled with this nonsense. So, yeah, that's it. Nothing else to say. I want you to think about that. And again, huge thanks to Cindy. I know we're going to have more conversations. I will definitely invite her again. Maybe next time to be more face-to-face. This is the future of the podcast. I'm hopefully, I want to start having more face-to-face conversations. The logistics can be a little bit crazy because everybody I talk to, they're world-leading figures, and they're busy and they're all over the place. So yeah, it's not going to be an easy logistically thing to do. Nonetheless, I will work on that. But the idea for me at this stage is that I want to bring in as many amazing guests as possible, and your support is a key really driver for me. I mean, I'm getting a lot of your emails. Thank you so much, guys. But please subscribe, join our membership program at aigeeks.com/join. The more members we have, the more guests I can bring you. And the more we can have open conversations like this, because this is an important conversation, like I just said. So, without any further discussions on this, I want you to think about it. Please put your comments below as usual. Send us your emails at editors@aigeeks.com, and I'll speak to you in the next one. Have a great day, weekend, wherever you're doing. I'll speak to you guys soon. Peace.